Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my November 2021 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. I'm going to start with the nerdy hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. Also, I put chapter markers in all of these videos, so if you want to skip forward or backwards to any of the things I'm mentioning, that'll be down below as always. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please be sure to do so and click that bell icon to see if you actually see my videos in your feed. In November, I read 18 things for a total of 5,607 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so about 2,434 of those pages were actually around 70 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 10 adult books, 7 YA books, and 1 middle grade book. I read 15 novels, 2 novellas, and 1 graphic novel. This month, the biggest chunk of what I read was fantasy, horror, and contemporary, followed by historical fiction, non-fiction, mystery, thriller, and romance. If you adjust by page count, it becomes apparent that the non-fiction was very wee. Most of these books were from the library, but I did knock out a lot of books for NetGalley November, and 1 from Book Depository. I read 8 ebooks, 7 audiobooks, 2 hardcovers, and 1 paperback. The majority of my books were in the 300 to 399 pages range, and everything was published in the last couple of decades. The majority of these books were written by female authors, with a few male, non-binary, and 1 with mixed authors. Most of the protagonists were female. In terms of setting, the US continues to dominate, but I had some reads from the UK, France, Japan, and other worlds. In terms of diversity of subject matter, many were queer, had to do with race or disability, many were intersectional, but a decent chunk had no discernible diversity. In terms of star ratings, this month I had 1 2-star read, 1 3-star read, 1 3.5-star read, 7 4-star reads, 4 4.5-star reads, and 4 5-star reads. Let's start with the lowest and work our way up to the highest, shall we? My 2-star read is something I read for an upcoming reading vlog, and that is The Death of an Owl. Now, the premise and the circumstances around the writing of this book were really interesting because a father had written a majority of it, and then he passed away and his son finished it. I was like, cool, I'm really interested to see, what came of this. However, I didn't like this at all. The whole first section of the book, because there's 3 major sections, didn't need to be there, had nothing really to do with anything. It was just basically a giant background dump about these characters. It started in 1981, and by the time we got to the real plot, it was in 2010. And we just kept seeing this main character throughout these times, and it's like, cool, he went to school with this guy that we eventually know is going to be important to the plot. Cool, he met a third cousin twice removed in a bar one time. Neat. Like, who cares? Then from there, the meat of the story happens when he's going to this estate owned by this guy who wants to eventually become the prime minister, but on the way there, that guy hits an owl with his vehicle, and instead of getting the owl help or anything like that, he violently bashes it against a garden wall over and over and over again. This is bad on a few levels because 1, that poor owl, 2, you could have just taken it to a vet, and 3, he's actually on the council that just made it illegal to kill a barn owl, and that's what he just did. So now he's trying to cover it up, and he's trying to bring our main character into it, saying that he told him to do it, and all of this crap. And then from there, owls just start haunting the 4 people that were involved in this. It wasn't great. I didn't care for it. Let's move on. My 3-star read this month was Nothing But Blackened Teeth. This was a novella, and it was about this group of 5 people who have flown to Japan so that 2 of them can get married in a haunted house there. Given it's novella, I'm not going to divulge too much more of what happens because it is very short. However, if you think to yourself, going to Japan, going to a haunted house with nobody around there, like no caretaker, it's just they kind of basically are allowed to be on the land, but they're not really supposed to be in the house, and they decide to go in the house. Do you think that creepy things are going to happen? Because I think they will. This was just okay. It was nice and creepy. It had some fun lines to it, but it wasn't anything super special for me. My 3.5-star read for the month was a children's nonfiction book called An Octopus Has Deadly Spit. This was a nonfiction book about octopuses and how they're really cool and lots of different facts about them, and I liked that. I did, however, have to knock it down a little bit in my ratings because there's cartoons through this, and at one point one of them was being very fat-phobic, and it actually made no sense for what it was being talked about for the octopuses, because it was talking about how octopuses can get through like a very tiny crevice, and then you see this octopus not being able to get through and a fish mocking it. And I was just like, can we not be fat phobic in kids books? Like, is that too hard to ask? Other than that, octopuses are really cool, and I've loved octopuses since I was a kid and used to reread the encyclopedia entry on them, because yes, we had encyclopedias when I was a kid because I'm old. So yeah, octopuses rule, and this book was okay. On to my 4-star reads, starting with a graphic novel called That Full Moon Feeling. This is just a short little graphic novel about a witch and a werewolf going on their first 3 dates, and then disastrous things happening on each of those dates. It's a lot of fun, it's really cute, I liked the art style, I liked the use of color, it's a good time. Next we have 5 Total Strangers. This is about a girl who is trying to get home to her mother for the holiday. She's been living with her father because she's going to an art high school, but she wants to go home to see her mom because it's the first time her mom is going to have Christmas without her twin sister who passed away last Christmas, so it's imperative that she gets home. However, when she gets to the city that she's in for her layover, her next flight home is cancelled. She then ends up in a car with the person that was sitting next to her on the plane and then 3 of that person's friends. However, she comes to realize those 3 people aren't actually this person's friend. They all just met in the airport. So she's just in this car with these absolute strangers and is pretty sure her parents are getting mad at her for this situation. Juxtaposed against this story are some letters that are clearly written to her from somebody who is very hyper-focused on her and obsessing over this one time they met. And as time goes on, you become convinced that one of these people in the car wrote those letters and means her harm. This was good because it had a lot of red herrings. It had a lot of different things where you thought maybe this is the person, maybe this is the person, maybe this is the person, and I liked it. I'm sure that if I went back through I could maybe poke little holes in the assumptions being made, but overall it did its job and it kept me on the edge of my seat wondering who was writing these letters and how were they doing the things they were doing. Next we have Unscripted, which is about this girl named Zelda Bailey Chow who is going to an improv camp for a couple of weeks with her brother and his brother's new boyfriend, and she is so excited to go there. She loves improv. She actually wants to end up on Saturday Night Live when she is old enough to do so, and she works really, really hard at this camp. How the camp is structured is there are a few teams that get formed, and then other than that everybody else just does like fun exercises, and she really wants to get on one of those teams so she can be showcased so that when one of her favorite actresses actually comes to see the performance, she's there. However, when she gets on that team, she's being coached by this guy named Ben. Now, Ben is really nice to her when nobody is around, but he's an absolute jackass when they're all rehearsing. She's in a group of all dudes. In fact, there's only 5 girls in this entire camp of over 200 kids, which it doesn't bode well. In fact, the only female group leader who was supposed to come back and actually head up her cabin just decided not to come back really short term, so they didn't even have somebody watching them at night in their cabin, which was weird. Although I have seen some great theater companies that do improv that are very balanced in male to female ratio and they don't rely on sexist jokes and that type of thing to get by, I have definitely seen high schooler aged kids just deciding that women have to only play certain types of roles and they can't be interesting, and that girls aren't funny, which is a major thing that comes up in this, so I can definitely relate to some of the things that happen in this, on top of the fact that then our character is also being sexually assaulted. So trigger warnings for that, and I feel like the depiction of that in this book was handled really, really well. My next book I believe doesn't come out until February, and that is Such a Pretty Smile. This is a horror book, and we get the perspectives of a mother named Caroline and a daughter named Lila, and in different times. So in 2004, in 2019, and it kind of deviates from those timelines near the end. Let's start with Lila, because I believe the book starts with Lila. She has a crush on her best friend. Her best friend isn't the greatest person in the world, but she also like has this crush and can't get out of it. She really idealizes this girl, and she basically does whatever this girl wants to keep her happy because she just wants to be close to her. However, that means the best friend is taking terrible risks that she should not be taking, and that's a whole thing to get into. Her mother is also known for being very strict and very paranoid, to the point where like when she drops them off for the movie, she's like, I'm dropping you off 10 minutes before, I'm gonna be here right as it ends, don't go anywhere else. Which is really good advice, because then her rotten best friend takes her somewhere else with some boys, right? Like, what the hell? Then we get the perspective of the mother 15 years previously, and she's engaged, she's doing art things because she's an artist. She also has a job where she actually teaches a small child some art because it pays really well, but some weird things start happening. In both of these timelines, there's disappearances and murders of young girls, and you come to wonder who is doing this, how is it happening 15 years apart in 2 different states? Additionally, as you go through this, there are so many male characters who gaslight or just infantilize these women, and it is hard to read it sometimes because of that, but I know it's doing it on purpose, so I kept going. This was really interesting because you don't really know until the end exactly what is happening and who's behind all of this, and I loved it for that. Next we have All's Well. This is a book about a woman who's teaching in a college, and she actually heads up the Shakespeare department. It's kind of an extracurricular, but she used to be an actress. However, during a production of the Scottish play, she actually fell off the stage, and she has some injuries from that. She actually now has chronic pain from that, which kind of messes with some of the things happening in her life. What I loved about this book is it's about her trying to put on one Shakespeare show while being a reproduction of another Shakespeare show, I won't tell you which one, having to do with chronic pain management and theater. Like, it's just so good. This gets nice and creepy and dark at points. You can really see some parallels between the original Shakespeare material and then some new little twists, and I just very much enjoyed it for that. This month I also read Under the Whispering Door, which continues to be a brand of queer whimsy that I just really enjoy from this author. Just after we meet our main character, he ends up dying, and he doesn't really believe that he's dead. I believe that's one of the 5 stages of grief. He has a caseworker assigned to him. He's taken to this little tea shop in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere that seems actually really popular for its location, and meets this person who's supposed to help him eventually go through the Whispering Door. This book is not only about life and death and what might happen after it and how we're scared about it and all of those types of things, but it's also about having these people come into your life that you can't connect with, or you connect way more with because of different circumstances, and it played with all of these really, really nicely. I really enjoyed that there was a they can't actually get together romance between the main character and the guy who runs the shop, because one's a ghost and one isn't. As I mentioned before, this book makes me just think of whimsy. It is very whimsical in its macabre themes, and I very much enjoy that style. Next we have A Curse in Ash by BookTube's own Julie from Pages and Pens. This is the first in what is probably going to be a trilogy from my understanding, and I very much enjoyed it. It's about the Fae, it's about a witch. It's set in this world that's very much like ours, except for witches exist and people know about fairies, and it's set in a town where the barrier is very thin, so you can actually get through as long as you have, you know, the appropriate blood to do so, or somebody is taking you through. We actually have 2 point of view characters in this. One is Ashlyn, and she is a witch with some interesting background information that you find out eventually. And then we have Reardon. Now, Reardon is from Ireland. He's actually just moved to this small town because his aunt lives there, and that's because in Ireland his parents both tragically died recently, and he's trying to run away from the ways he was coping with that. Now, a position that exists in this world for humans is something called a Ravdi. It's not something you can train to be or you can be picked to be. It's just something that magically happens if you happen to meet a witch that you magically bind with. And essentially a Ravdi is a person who amplifies magical powers. So they don't have any magic for themselves, but they can help a witch with their powers. You can go ahead and guess what possibly might happen between these characters. And with the information that this is a wonderful polyamorous book, you might understand that there's maybe at least one other character interested in one of these 2 people, if not both of them. This is a fantastic blend of a poly situation, all of this cast of characters who are very interesting, these different things that have to do with a mystery of who is killing people and what's going on. I cannot wait for the next book. I'm very excited for it. On to my 4.5-star reads, the first one being The Intimacy Experiment. This is a companion novel to The Roommate by Rosie Danan that I absolutely loved, and it follows a woman we meet in that book. She is an ex-adult performer, and she is very successful in what she's doing, running a company that promotes sexual education, but she wants to break into the world of academia and live lecturing, and academia won't have her because our society is kind of messed up. Until she meets a rabbi at a networking event who says he wants her to do a series called Modern Intimacy at his synagogue to get younger people back to the synagogue. And also, this is a romance. He's hot, she's hot. What's going to happen? I wonder. I really like this because it had to do with a whole host of things. Vulnerabilities having to do with professional lives, spiritual lives, lives in the past, what has happened to certain people, the fact that she completely owns the fact that she is an adult entertainer and that's never going to change, and she's proud of it, and I love that. This took me to a lot of fun places, and I would love to read more by this author. Next we have The Taking of Jake Livingston. This is about a boy who is a medium, so he hears ghosts every once in a while, and up until the course of this book that's been a mild inconvenience. However, somebody gets murdered down the block from him, and then he starts seeing these things that he thinks a ghost has done, nobody really believes him. The other perspective we get is a ghost named Sawyer. Now Sawyer, about a year previous, was a mass murderer because he went into his high school and shot a bunch of people up. However, he's trying to gain enough power to take over a body and basically come back to life doing that. The weird and most uncomfortable part about this book is how it makes you really want to sympathize with Sawyer, because you get to see a lot of his backstory. You get to see his diary entries from before he died and before he did what he did, and it makes you really want to sympathize with him, which I felt very uncomfortable about because I don't want to sympathize with somebody who thinks it's a good idea to just go shoot up a high school. However, ultimately I think this came out in kind of a balance, because it wasn't trying to prove to you that Sawyer is actually a good person. It was just giving you this background information and then showing you these terrible things that occur throughout the book. What I really also liked is how these characters have something in common. Jake is queer but hiding it. Sawyer was also queer and was also hiding it. And even though they come from different walks of life, even though they're different races, even though they're at different schools, they both approached this very differently as well, but also had some of the same deep-seated feelings to do with how people are going to perceive them. And part of that is because Sawyer was in fact trying to take over Jake's body, so that's a whole different thing. I consumed this one as an audiobook and I just wanted to keep listening to it because I was so compelled with what was going to happen. Next we have The Paris Library, which is a historical fiction concerning the American Public Library in Paris, just previous to and during the Nazi occupation during World War II. And then we also have a timeline in the 1980s in Montana. Although the timeline in the 80s has its own intricacies, it really helps to serve us understanding what happened in the first timeline and just different stories about different people around that time, because one person overlaps in these timelines. Odile is a woman who is trying to become a librarian at this library. She actually ends up getting a job there, meeting everybody, all of those types of things before the war starts. And then we also see her in Montana years and years later, and this little girl trying to figure out how this really cool, elegant French woman ended up in Montana. This was beautiful and bibliophilic, so I was predisposed to enjoy it, but even outside of the fact that it had to do with a library, I could really see that the author paid a lot of attention to detail and wanting to get these stories out from this time, and I just very much enjoyed it. Next we have Iron Widow, which is a book that is very popular right now, so I probably don't have to explain it, but I will. This takes place in a futuristic world where there are these robots that they use to defend their borders, and these robots require two people to be in them, one man and one woman, and what ends up happening is the man usually drains the life force of the woman to keep powering this robot, and usually she ends up dead. Our main character's sister was actually one of these concubines, because of course that's what they call it, and her pilot ended up killing hers, so she wants to avenge her sister by going to kill the pilot. This is not only a fantastic adventure story where we get to see this woman kicking absolute ass, this is also a character with a major disability given to her by her society. Not to mention our main character just completely takes her agency. We've got queer characters, we've got polyamory. I cannot wait for the next book because I thought this was a standalone and then it ended and I was like, wait, what now? On to my 5-star reads. The first one is If This Gets Out. This is about a boy band that is going on their first European tour. They're all around 17, 18 years old. And we get perspectives of two of the characters in this boy band. One of them has been out for years, however he's not allowed to come out to the public because the management company says that goes against his brand, so he hasn't been able to do that. And then another member of the boy band who realizes on this trip that he might not be as straight as he thought he was. We get the perspectives of these two characters, so we get to see what it's like from both their points of view, and then we also have to deal with the fact that they're on a European tour. One of the people in the group is self-medicating with drugs because of the stress and just what goes on with the management company. We get to see how controlled these people are, how infantilized and gaslit these people are, all in the name of entertainment. It's in my 5-star category, so obviously I absolutely adored it. Next we have Stay Gold by Tobly McSmith. This is about a boy who is going to a new high school in Texas and he's going there stealth. Stealth, if you're not familiar, is a term for when a trans person tries to pass as cis in any environment they happen to be in. Once there, he meets a cheerleader who he is very, very interested in, and we also get her perspective as well. What I loved most about getting both their perspectives is it didn't come out all sunshines and rainbows at the very beginning of it. We did have characters not really understand what it meant to be trans, and then also thought that this person had been lying and all of that type of garbage, and that's honestly realistic realistic if you're going to go to a high school somewhere in Texas. Not saying that every high school in Texas is going to be like that, but from my understanding, there are going to be a lot of people in that demographic who will not understand and accept somebody for being trans. We also got to see this character make his first group of guy friends and just be a guy, and then the complications that come with that because of the innate homophobia and then sometimes transphobia that comes with just being a bro. It's just a joke, and we also played with the complications of popularity and all of those types of things, so I overall very much enjoyed it. However, trigger warnings for assault and transphobia because that definitely comes up in this, as well as suicidal thoughts. Penultimately, we have White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a haunted house story and I absolutely loved it. Essentially, this family has moved to a new town because they've been incentivized to do so. Her mother is an artist and she's basically got an artist in residency thing going on, so they get to live in the house. After 3 years and the contract is over, they can maybe even take over the lease if they really want to, and having a home that you don't have to worry about paying for is a big draw. However, it's in this neighborhood that they wanted to say is up and coming, but really is just run down, and their house is the only house on the block that seems like any work has gone into it in the last couple of decades, and everything else is very, very run down. Nobody else lives on their block. And then of course, weird, creepy things start happening, like things start disappearing, and it sounds like there's people outside the door when they're not, and all of these types of things. There's also a wonderful technical component that comes into this, and shadow banning is a thing that comes up, and I loved seeing that depicted in a haunted house story because it was such an interesting new take on it. My camera ran out of battery, so it must be done soon. This one really keeps you on your toe as to the reveal of what is going on, and I very much enjoyed that reveal and then seeing what happened after that. Obviously, I'm being purposely vague because I'm not going to tell you. My favorite book that I read this month, hands down, is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is about an Indigenous girl who goes to this high school. She's kind of the weird girl at the high school because all she does in her spare time is watch slasher movies. And she's kind of taught herself to think about everything as though it could be an aspect or a trope from a slasher movie. After she's found bleeding out in the town canoe, she's sent away to a rehabilitation center, and when she gets back, there's this girl at her school that she is obsessed with, thinking that this girl is a final girl, which means that she is now in a slasher. However, she's outside of it trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Interspersed into this are all of these assignments she handed in for extra credit in her history course, where she was basically talking about Slasher 101, so talking about the different tropes and the different movies from this genre, and I just want to get myself a physical copy of this book, go through absolutely all of it again, write down all of the references to all of the movies, and see all of the ones that I haven't seen yet, because I used to love horror movies as a kid, but nobody else would watch them with me, so I didn't get to see as many as I really should have, and I would love to see the rest on this list. This is just such an interesting book because not only does it talk about these different tropes, it also plays out some of these tropes, and it just absolutely loved it, and now I have to read everything else by this author. If you want to hear me talk more about these books or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always linked down below. If you read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!